At the Nuremberg Trials, this diary was presented as proof of a crime. No explanations were needed. Before us is the diary of Tanya Savicheva. It can be read in less than a minute. There are no long sentences in it, no stories about the war, no descriptions of hunger, cold, or bombings. There are only a few short lines, and in each of them, someone's death. This diary was written by a child who did not try to explain what she felt, because at a certain point, feelings become too heavy for words. These notes are not a story about heroism. They are traces of how people disappear from a home, from a life, from memory, one by one. Now we will read the diary in its entirety. And then we will try to understand what stands behind each short phrase, why these people died, and how the siege destroyed a family, not all at once, but one person at a time.
Zhenya died. December 28th, 12 o'clock in the morning, 1941. Grandmother died. January 25th, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, 1942. Lika died. March 17th, 5 o'clock in the morning, 1942. Uncle Vasya died. April 13th, 2 o'clock at night, 1942. Uncle Leisha. May 10th, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, 1942. Mom. May 13th, 7:30 in the morning, 1942. The Savichevs died all. Only Tanya remained.
The Savichevs were a large family living in Leningrad. Several generations lived together. Adults worked, children went to school. They shared everyday life, responsibilities, and care for one another. The family was close. They were used to relying on each other and facing difficulties together. Tanya Savicheva was the youngest child. Before the war, her life was ordinary: school, home, relatives nearby. Her father had owned a small business before the revolution. He was involved in trade and food production, including a bakery. Later, this business was taken away, and the family lost the stability it once had. Tanya's father died before the war. By the time the blockade began, the family no longer had him, but they still had each other. They were not wealthy, but they were not destitute. They lived as many Leningrad families did, without privileges, but with work, routine, and a strong sense of family unity. When the war began, the Savichevs faced it together as a family. No one could imagine that this closeness would soon be tested to its very limit. When the siege began, life inside the family changed. Everyone did what they could, as long as they still had strength. The adults worked. They went to their jobs every day, because work meant food cards. Without work, there was no bread. Zhenya worked at a factory. She walked across the city every day, often on foot, often exhausted. She worked not only for herself, but for the whole family. Other family members also worked, as long as they were able to. Some worked full shifts, others part-time. Some helped wherever help was needed. Grandmother stayed at home. She took care of what was left of everyday life: the room, the stove, the small order that still held the family together. Leka helped as much as he could. He carried water, stood in lines, did small but necessary things. Tanya stayed at home most of the time. She was still a child. She watched the adults leave and waited for them to come back. At first, everyone believed it would not last long, that work, discipline, and being together would be enough to survive. Zhenya. In December 1941, when public transport in Leningrad had stopped, and the streets were buried under snow that would not be cleared all winter, Zhenya's health was severely weakened. She regularly donated blood. At the same time, she walked almost 7 kilometers on foot from home to the factory and back. Sometimes she stayed overnight at the factory to save strength and worked 2 shifts in a row. On Sunday morning, December 28th, Zhenya did not come to work. Her sister Nina, worried by her absence, left her night shift and hurried to their home on Mokovaya Street. Zhenya was 32 years old. She died in Nina's arms. To remember the date, Tanya took Nina's notebook and wrote the first line of the diary under the letter Z. Grandmother. At the beginning of January 1942, she was diagnosed with 3rd-degree alimentary dystrophy. She needed urgent hospitalization, but she refused, saying that the city hospitals were already overcrowded. She died on January 25th. Tanya wrote this down under the letter B. In official documents, a different date was later recorded. Before her death, Grandmother asked not to discard her ration card, so it could be used until the end of the month. Her place of burial is unknown. She may have been buried in a mass grave. Leonid worked at the Admiralty shipyard. He worked day and night. The factory was across the Neva River, and he had to walk several kilometers to work and back, even in winter, even when he was already exhausted. Like many workers during the blockade, Leonid often stayed overnight at the factory to save strength and to work 2 shifts in a row. He was very weak, but he never missed a shift. One day, Leonid did not come to work. A few days later, the workshop was told that Savicheva had died. Leonid died of starvation on March 17, 1942. Uncle Vasya died on April 13th. He was 56 years old. By that time, the blockade had taken most of his strength. He was buried in a mass grave. Uncle Lesha died on May 10th. He was 71 years old. Doctors diagnosed him with severe starvation. Even hospitalization could not save him. Tanya wrote down the date of his death, but did not write the word died. By that time, there was almost no strength left even for words. Maria Savicheva was the last adult left in the apartment. By May 1942, she was exhausted, barely able to stand. She had watched her children and relatives die one after another, and she stayed alive only to the very end. On May 13th, at 7:30 in the morning, Maria Savicheva died. After her death, Tanya was left alone in the apartment. That same day, Tanya made her last entries in the notebook. The Savichevs died all. Only Tanya remained. There were 2 more members of the family who did not appear in the diary: Tanya's sister Nina and her brother Mikhail. In February 1942, Nina did not come home from work. The city was under heavy shelling, and the family believed she had died. In reality, Nina was evacuated together with her factory across Lake Ladoga. She was alive, but there was no way to send a message back to the besieged city. Mikhail was outside Leningrad when the war began. He joined a partisan unit, fought for several years, and survived the war. Tanya did not know this. She wrote in the diary only about those whose deaths she witnessed herself. After her mother died, Tanya was left completely alone. She was too weak to walk, too weak to bury her mother, and did not yet know that her brother and sister were alive. That first day, Tanya stayed with neighbors in the same building. She ate very little and spoke almost not at all. The next morning, she left to live with a relative. She carried with her a small bag with family valuables. She planned to exchange them for bread. After that, she was taken under guardianship and later evacuated from the city. By that time, Tanya was already severely ill. She had tuberculosis, extreme exhaustion, and could barely move. In evacuation, she lived in orphanages and hospitals. At first, she learned that her brother was alive. Later, her brother learned that Tanya was alive. They found each other only through documents and letters. But by then, it was already too late. Tanya Savicheva died on July 1st, 1944. She was 14 years old. She survived the blockade, but she did not survive what the blockade had done to her. Her diary survived. A few short lines written by a child. They were later presented at the Nuremberg Trials as evidence of what the Siege of Leningrad was. Not numbers, not reports, but a family, one by one, disappearing.